Johnny stood in front of the cabin he shared with Jessica and the children. He had a tin cup of coffee in one hand, and he was watching Joe tie his sugan to the back of a horse. An axe was strapped across the top of his sugan, and a Winchester was in the saddle boot. Years ago, when Johnny McCabe had been returning to Pennsylvania from Texas, he had found his brother Joe on the trail. Johnny hadn't seen him in more than 2 years. Joe had always been the strongest of the 4 brothers, but Johnny found Joe was packed with even more muscle than ever, and his hair was long, touching his shoulders, and his face was covered with a thick brown beard. Now, more than 25 years later, Joe's hair was showing strands of gray, and his whiskers had a streak of white that touched his mustache and ran down the entire length of his jaw, almost like someone had taken a brush with white paint, touched it to his upper lip, and dragged it down the length of his beard. His buckskin shirt wasn't the same one he had worn back then. You can get only so many years out of one, but it didn't look much different, and he wore a floppy hat again. Not the same one from years ago, but like the original. The hat was a desert neutral color. He wore canvas pants that were tucked into black riding boots. In the 1850s, Joe had worn a belt with a cap and ball colt tucked into the front. Now he had a peacemaker tucked into his belt. At his left side was a knife that was so long it looked like a short sword, the same knife he had always carried. And he was still packed with solid muscle. The years hadn't taken that from him. The sun hadn't yet showed itself, but the eastern sky was a steel gray. Johnny figured Joe would have a mile or 2 behind him before sunrise. Morning birds were swooping about and filling the air with chatter and song. Johnny said, "I hate to see you go. For years we didn't know where you were or if you were even alive. But now I've gotten used to having you around.